Hey, Picard here, and I woke up weirdly early and ready to work today, which is like wild to me because I went to bed at like 3 a.m. last night. I know for those of you who watched my stream yesterday, you're probably like, why didn't you go? Why didn't you go to bed earlier? Because I was talking about how tired I was, and I don't know about you guys, but I get like a second wind when it hits like post 5 o'clock. I'm pretty sure I'm still nocturnal from college, so I mean maybe not nocturnal actually because I can't like pull an all nighter anymore to save my life. I'm getting old, but I definitely still get more energy at night than I do during the day. Which even then I don't even know if I can like fully say that because I don't know. I woke up pretty juicy this morning. But yeah, so I woke up at like it's like 10 o'clock right now. I woke up at like 8:30, and I'm just like, why though? You ever just do that? You get up early and then you're just laying in bed. Like it's on a complete day off. Like it's Sunday right now, when I'm recording this. And you just lay in bed and you're just like, okay, but why though? Like, I want you to look me in the eyes, God, and tell me why you got me up at 8:30 with no alarm. um, but yeah, so I woke up and I was like, all right, because I was doing some character sheet stuff last night, which is why I went to bed so late. I was trying so hard to finish this character arc worksheet, and I was like, all right, no, I gotta go to sleep. I gotta go to sleep. So I woke up this morning to only four more characters to fill out, and which is nice. I just finished that too. So after I finish this recording, I'm gonna get breakfast and call my mom and officially start the next leg of what I need to work on character wise. Speaking of sheets, this isn't really a leftovers logs in the traditional sense per se. I feel like I haven't had one of those, it's been a couple episodes since I've had one of those. Actually no, because I think I literally talked about last time. I literally talked about yeah, I talked about my character, my three act structure worksheet. So scratch that. Just scratch the whole thing. Um, but this isn't going to be so much a leftovers logs with me talking about my process, as it is going to be a follow up to something that I asked last episode, which was, you guys have any kind of things that you want me to talk about? And I got a lot of responses on Discord and things that I'm, gonna work into the next episode because it actually kind of works pretty well. There's one on world building. There's a thread on world building that somebody was asking me about. Then there's a thread on characters that somebody was asking me about. But before all of that, I got a comment from Aporic. I'm pretty sure. I hope I'm saying your name right. Aporic, who asked me in the last video, hey, well, what kind of like insecurities and stuff, do you face as an artist? I wonder if I can like pull up the actual comment because it's a very specific, well, not specific in like the things that they were asking, but I do want to read the comment so I can like actually address it. But all right. So they said, I wonder if you could do videos about like having to deal with insecurities or not feeling like your work or you. Whoa. I'm just gonna start from the top. I wonder if you could do videos about like having to deal with insecurities or not feeling like your work or you are good enough or worth pursuing. That ever happens to you? Maybe even a tutorial style video. And the reason why I wanted to read that specifically is because of the last bit, the if that ever happens to you bit, because obviously clearly we know that anxieties and insecurities happen to everybody, but I really like had to think about that question because I was like, man, it has been a while since I've had like insecurities about working on leftovers or about me being an artist in general, or so I thought. So I was like, it's been not it's not been completely sweet. Like, we're not completely, out of the woods. Mental illness and stuff. You're never completely out of the woods. It's always just kind of lurking around the corner. But it's been a while since it's been like at the top of my priorities, or sitting on my soul real heavy. So I was thinking about it, and I was like, okay, I really would like to do an episode like that, because I'm always the type of person who enjoys like full transparency moments, and I like sharing my Grant, I didn't like to back in the day, because I didn't like being vulnerable. And now that I'm thinking about this, I'm like, damn, how far have I come? Because vulnerability was like really hard for me back in the day, for other reasons. But I nowadays I really like sharing the hardships and the insecurities and just the wild stuff of being a creator. So I was like, oh man, I really want to make a video like this. That's what I'm doing. That's what I'm doing today. To kind of give like a little summary of what I'm doing character wise, because that is the next part. After I finished my narrative, my 3-act structure worksheets, the next part was to fill out the character sheets. And I won't go too much into detail, because I do want to have an episode specifically about that, and specifically about answering a lot of the questions that people were asking me when I asked, like, what do you want me to talk about? And so that'll probably be a long episode now that I'm thinking about it. But just as a general a general gist, I've been using general gist like a lot lately, which is weird. And I don't know if it's well, it's not weird. It's a general statement, but like, I can't remember if I've been using it like talking to people, or if I've been using it on these worksheets. Because like, when I work on these especially the character worksheets, I have been kind of using my own voice in there, where it's not just like me writing down just regular information. It'll be shit like, oh, this character kind of goofy. But it's like in a language that I understand. So like, the general gist, I don't know if I've been talking or using that casually in conversation, or casually in conversation with myself on these character sheets. So I don't know, but the general gist is that I worked on the character. So I have character sheets that are more detailed, that I filled out, and then I was supposed to be doing character dynamic sheets, so like the relationship charts and stuff, but like long form, and not the one where it's like the lines cross over and stuff. Supposed to be doing that, but I found out that I don't really need to do that, because of the way I did the character sheets, which I'll explain more, in another episode, and maybe the next episode, probably, because that's the characters is the next part of the hierarchy, so I should probably address that in its own episode. But now I just finished doing a sheet where I summarize the start, ending, the start, middle, and end of each character's progression throughout the story, just in a little summary line. And I loved doing that. Like, I felt like I needed to do it. So I was like, not necessarily, because that's just one more step in the process, right? So I cut out the dynamics, but I add in it's just another piece of work. Adding in the character arc, story-wide character arcs. But I sat down and I was like, all right, you know what? Because I'm going through each season, and I'm writing down a checklist for each character of what I need to establish for each of them in each season. And I was like, all right, you know what? I'm not quite ready to move on to season 2 yet. Like, I feel like, a lot of it is anxiety, but a lot of it also is just like not feeling ready. So I was like, all right, let me just do these whole character arcs, so I know where they're going, start, middle, and end of the story. I know where they start and where they're going and where they end up. And that really helped me a lot, actually. Surprise. Who would have thunk? Fleshing out your character arcs across the entire story can help you plan their arcs across the entire story. Crazy. But yes, I just finished that. That was a thing where I was working on it last night and had the 4 characters left, but I just finished that. So, that is where I'm at now as far as the character section of the hierarchy. And again, I'll talk more about that in detail in that episode. But now I can move into the actual insecurities part, the artistic insecurities. I focused mainly on artistic insecurities because I have a lot of existential anxieties that I just don't feel like going into, and I feel like I want to keep it related to leftovers in a way. So just know that all of this stuff kind of branches off though into existential territory, but for the sake of this video, I'm keeping it related to leftovers. So not sure, we're already 11 minutes in. I'm not sure how long it'll take me to get through this, but I have 4 main points, and yeah, let me just go ahead and get into it. So number 1, the number, well, actually they're not in order of like more important, least important, etc., etc. There is no order. This is just like number 1 on the list that I was thinking of. But number 1 is time, and that actually is the reason why I started this hiatus, is because I have a huge insecurity about time, and I think I should probably just use insecurity and anxiety, or I could probably use insecurity and anxiety interchangeably in this episode, because it's kind of like, I mean, it all kind of is connected in a way. But time anxiety is a big thing. I was always afraid that, like, oh man, I'm going to be working on leftovers like forever. Like, I don't know where the story is going, or I know where the story is going generally, but I don't know specifically where the story is going, and it feels like this huge monumental thing, or not, well, yeah, monumental, I don't know, the word I'm trying to do is something like big. It's this huge thing. I'll just say huge thing. I feel like monumental is giving it more credit than I need to give it. But at least right now, anyway. It just feels like this huge task that I'm taking on, and it was kind of stressing me out a bit, because I'm like, oh man, I'm gonna be working on this, forever. And I do have other stories that I want to work on. Like, I have and thesis, which I'm not sure if I'm going to I'm not sure if I'm gonna like actually work on it, but I do really want to. So I'm not putting pressure on myself to get back to it. And for those of you who don't know, which is probably most of you actually, Anthesis is my story of Chairman Rose, because I do love Chairman Rose from Pokemon Sword and Shield. My story of him and how he grew, and how his anxiety developed. Not just about like Galar's energy and everything, but just like in general, because I do feel like he's a very mentally ill character that we just kind of glossed over for the sake of villainy. But I felt very connected to him in a lot of ways. But his story, and Thesis is his story from the ages of 4 to 40-ish. Like, but I've got to turn off my do not disturb because my phone is vibrating. Sorry about that. But yeah, so I do have that story, and then I have like an entire other universe, like a multi-part story that I've been working on since I was like in 6th grade. So there's that too. And I'm just like, oh my god, as much as I love leftovers, I don't want that to be the only thing I work on. But then I'm also like, I kind of, if it was the only thing I worked on, I wouldn't mind it either, because I'm putting my all into it, and I love working on it. But there are other things that I do want to do too. So time wise. And I don't want to like rush leftovers because it needs time to bake, right? But I also don't want to not rush or not have a time frame for certain things happening and stuff like that. So I'm always in this battle of insecurity about like how much time I'm spending on just everything in general, honestly, but specifically with regards to leftovers, how much time I'm spending on the story and like how much time there is between chapters and stuff like that, and not like narratively, but I mean like me working on the series, because I've had like a lot of unplanned and I won't say unwarranted, but unplanned hiatuses. Whether it's like me working through senior year of college or trying to be an adult, and just it's a lot of time. It's a lot of time that's passing, and that goes into that's the main one that goes into like an existential crisis sort of thing. But yeah, so that is number one. I'm gonna cut that off before we get too deep into things. Number two is dissemination of dissemination of information. That's another word that I'm like, I don't understand how that became a part of my vocabulary, and I want to kind of like talk to the person who who started that for me, because like I used that same word and I think it was chapter 11. You know what? That might have been when where it started. Well, no, because I knew the word. Whatever. I'm just going over. I'm just like, I don't know, rambling right now. But dissemination of information is just the most difficult way to say like, how am I going to get the information across? So I don't really know. I'm on my big word shit today, I guess. But yeah, so dissemination of information pertains to the fact that like this is okay. So I mentioned that I wasn't really sure about my insecurities because I've been having like a pretty good time working on leftovers and my art, and stuff. And leftovers is an improvement project, so it's like that kind of mellows out the insecurities a bit, just because like I'm giving myself room to grow and room to like not feel bad about my art if it's not that great looking in a chapter. So I'm really really happy with the progression of leftovers, and like the old chapters versus the new. It feels like it's the progression and the improvement project aspect of it has really taken over a lot of the insecurities that I would normally have from looking at old art and stuff like that. And that's just like embracing the fact that you're not always gonna be good at things. Like, and because I'm literally, this is leftovers is, for those of you who don't know, leftovers is my first comic, and I always say like it's my first like baby's first narrative because the last thing I ever wrote like in full was that story, one of the stories in that universe, in multi-part universe. I wrote part of that in 6th grade, and outside of things like little fan fictions and stuff that I've done, just one-offs and stuff, but this is the first time I'm doing something where it is a full story from beginning to end, and it's definitely a comic. It was my first time doing a comic, just full stop. So I gotta like give myself room to give myself permission to grow. Otherwise it's gonna be a lot of sad reflective hours. Or at least there was a lot of sad reflective hours in the beginning, but it's not so much now. But back to dissemination of information, right? So, I keep saying that word. Who is she? $5 word. But yeah, so this basically has an insecurity that has arisen specifically during this hiatus, like, and really recently, actually, like after, because I think Aporic posted that 3 weeks ago. I think I posted that vlog. Yeah, the beginning of May. And that's when I was like not really sure, but recently when I started working on like the characters and everything and realizing, because Leftovers is kind of more of a character, kind of, it is absolutely 100%, what am I talking about, more of a character story than it is like a plot heavy story. So the like coming up with the plot and stuff was like, all right, I came up with the three act structure points that I needed to go over, but like getting into the characters and actually making the character sheets and realizing how much goes in, or how much is going to go into these characters, and how much information I need to get across, because it's not just like they start at their point that they enter the story and then we go forward. Like there's a lot of baggage and stuff in the past that informs how they are now. Obviously, like we're like that too, in real life. So there's a lot of stuff I have to go over, that there too. And it's like, how am I gonna do this? Like, how much do I plan beforehand? Like, how much do I do on the go? And it's even now that I'm talking about it, it's getting all tangled up in my head, and I'm trying not to like let it be bigger than it is, just because trying to go with the flow, trying to take it, one step at a time, which is like hard when I'm also planning the story as a whole. So it's like this weird process of like expand, shrink. Like you gotta see the forest, now you gotta see the trees, and I'm trying to like keep that see the trees mindset, but like still allow myself to see the forest and plan everything in a general sense. But it's there's a lot. Like I can't even go into too much about Leftovers, obviously without like spoilers and stuff, but there is a lot to cover. And I had like whole episodes based around, the episodes of Leftovers Vlogs based around like the world building. And that is just one thing. Then I have all these characters, and fun fact, I know how I was mentioning last time, like, oh yeah, I narrowed down my characters. I narrowed down my main characters, because I was like, across the storylines, I couldn't really figure out like who was the main character, who was super important, who was, this, that, and the other. I narrowed them down to 32 characters. Crazy, wild. So yeah, for those of you who are like, those of you who comment on Leftovers and are like, you have so many main characters, and we're like just in the troop days. We're just, talking about the troop and their Pokemon and everything. Now granted, their Pokemon don't really count as main characters, they're more side characters, but like, you have no idea. Like whenever you guys comment that, I just laugh and a tear rolls down my cheek, because there's so many other characters, and I'm always so insecure and anxious about how I'm gonna get all this information out, and if I'm going to get it out, in a cohesive format, because I don't want Leftovers to feel like it's trying to do too much. I want it to like flow together, even with all these different characters, and it's definitely a huge undertaking, because like I said, first big narrative, baby's first narrative, and I'm like, it's like I'm not gonna give you a metaphor for that, you know what it is. I was gonna give you like a stupid ass metaphor too, like, ooh, I'm gonna stop that. But it is like, it's a lot. Yeah, I'm gonna move on because I feel like you got the general gist of what I'm going for. But definitely how I'm going to, I guess in the TLDR version, how I'm going to get this information out, and in what pace I'm gonna get it out, and if how much I do need to tell and how much I do need to show, and all this other stuff, that wild narrative stuff. Okay, so let's go to point 3. I hope that wasn't too rambly. I hope you picked up. You probably picked up on it like in the first three sentences when I was talking about it. But yeah, so number 3, and I'm trying to think, do I want to do number 3 first or number 4? You know what? Yeah, I'm gonna go with number 3 first because I'm just gonna go in order. This one says in my notes, oh God, the big one. So as I'm reading comments on stream, I end up coming up. I didn't even give the topic of this one. So number 3 is originality, and I feel like this is something that we all kind of go through because there's a lot of well, I know this is something we all kind of go through, but there's a lot of recycled tropes in like any kind of, well, I was gonna say Nuzlocke community, but like any kind of media, really, there's a lot of recycled tropes. It's just about like what you do with those tropes. But like there's times where I'm reading certain comics on stream and I'm like, oh my God, like this is like exactly what I had planned for leftovers. And part of me gets that kind of, it's not, well, it is insecurity because it's on this list, but it's not like it eats at me a little teeny bit, but it doesn't eat at me as much as I think it would have back in the day. Like I'm glad that I didn't end up getting into the community and reading more comics and like actively engaging in more stuff until I was fully founded in what I wanted to do with leftovers and leftovers' identity to me. Because while I feel like, oh man, there's a lot of elements that are like similar to leftovers. Like some of them are, oh my God, it's like crazy. But there's a lot of elements that are similar, to leftovers. But we're all kind of working within the same universe, so there's going to be elements that are similar to one another. So the main thing that I think keeps me up at night is not the fact that there are elements that are similar, to other comics and leftovers, and it's like that as a whole, but more so that like I haven't gotten to those elements yet. So it kind of makes me, wonder, or not wonder, but it kind of makes me like a little anxious that like I haven't gotten to those elements yet, and I am, reading all these comics on stream, and sometimes and I'm not gonna lie, this is all based around my pre-existing imposter syndrome of like, because we all take in information and we all take in influences from our daily lives, but like a lot of these things that I was planning with leftovers were done before I even got to them in these comics, and I think it creates like a weird blurry line when I'm posting that stuff after I've read these comics and stuff, and it's just making my imposter syndrome act up. And for those of you who don't know, imposter syndrome is the fear of being called out as a fraud, or the fear that somebody is going to like call you out and say that you aren't deserving of the success that you have, or there's a lot of stuff that goes into imposter syndrome, but basically it's being called out as a fraud is like the main basis of all of it. But on the flip side, the way that I've, because I feel like I haven't necessarily given, not solutions to these insecurities so far, but at the very least how I'm dealing with these insecurities. But for the originality one, I am the way. Okay, so there was this one thing that changed shit for me when I was younger, and it was on this blog post of this it was like a LiveJournal blog post of was it LiveJournal? No, it wasn't LiveJournal. It doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't matter. But it was on a journal post of somebody whose art I really admired, and back in the day I was like really, really, really harping on like I want to make my own style, my own art style. Like I feel, like I'm biting off everybody too much. I want to. I feel like as an artist, right, that it maybe not. Some people are lucky enough to not have to go through this struggle, but trying to find your own art style is like the pits. But I found this blog post. It was actually attached to a tutorial on art style, and they were like, your art style is going to be unique because nobody goes through the same experiences in life that you do when you're putting pen to paper. And that, like, as a baby, because I was in like middle school when I read that. Like, as a baby, to that person who wrote that in their live journal, thank you, because you changed me as a person when I read that. And that's the kind of mentality that I take up with everything, basically. But more specifically with originality in this list of insecurities. Basically, you can have two concepts, but the way that people get those across and the way that the things that people choose to explore are gonna be different because you're just different people. And that gives me a lot of comfort because that takes away a lot of that. It takes the teeth out of that insecurity quite a bit, because it's like, okay, even though this story beat is very similar on paper, I'm choosing to focus on characters instead of focus on the story beat itself or the plot itself, or whatever. And even if that other person is also choosing to focus on characters, it's like, okay, well, our characters are different, and the things that we want to focus on are different. But I try not to condense it too much, because like at the end of the day we just don't need to worry too much about like originality. Like there's so many different stories that originality basically doesn't exist. So and that might be like a hot take, but like I'm gonna do me, and I'm letting the other artists, letting everybody else's comics do them, right? So as long as I'm doing me, as long as I'm feeling alright in doing me, then it shouldn't matter. I'll be able to like field any, not that I feel like anybody's gonna come up to me and be like, oh, you copied this point, whatever, but like if it happens, I know I have faith in my work, and I know that whatever I had was there beforehand, so I can hey, like, okay, like if you feel that way, that's fine, but I know what I made, essentially. Now, granted, it's on this list for a reason. Originality is on this list for a reason, because it's still something that creeps into my quarters when I'm trying to get asleep. but yeah, I've mostly been able to combat that, thankfully. All right, so the fourth one and the final one is one that is specifically very one that didn't, because all these other ones were like there in a way in the background, like not necessarily center field, but they were in the background from just the beginning of like Leftovers and just in general in my life. But this one, and maybe this is also in the background, or this has also been in the background, but I just haven't explored it enough because I feel like it's a new sense of responsibility. But this one, number 4, is moral of the story, and that is basically like I've been getting somewhat insecure recently about whether Leftovers has some like big moral lesson or purpose behind the way it's told. And mainly because of the stuff that I'm tackling in the story. It feels almost irresponsible to not say it or make a point on it. But I also am trying to offset that, because I don't think, and this goes into like the way that I wasn't gonna go into like my personal existential stuff, but this goes into the way that I interact with media and the way I interact around like different news topics and stuff like that. I don't think everyone needs to have an opinion on something. I think sometimes things can just exist, and or nobody needs to have, no one not everybody needs to come in and make this big moral stance on things, basically. If you have an opinion, okay, but like, especially in storytelling, I think it's okay for things to just exist. But now I'm in the process of trying to convince myself that it's okay for things to just exist. Specifically with the topics that I'm, talking about with leftovers, I can just go put out, a message and not have to. Because I think the main thing is that there's so many different characters and so many different viewpoints and perspectives that, especially since I'm the type of person who believes that, like, no one is the main character of their story. Like, everybody has their own, there's a lot of nuance in the world that I feel like we often stamp out because we're, trying to fit into these different perfect little groups. But I think that everybody has their reasons for doing things, and not in this kind of like super altruistic, like, oh, everyone deserves to be redeemed sort of way. I don't know where that came from, but it's just been something that's been on my mind. But I think it's important to look at the nuance of situations. So all of these characters that I'm coming up with, they're not like all gonna make good decisions, and they're not all gonna end up sweet by the end, They're not all gonna end up, in a good spot by the end. Some people are really shitty, and they have to go through that phase. So I don't want to make any kind of hard, fast points about, or hard, fast, like, I can't even think of like the word for it, but yeah, I'll just say hard, fast points about any specific topics, because I think there's nuance that gets lost when you set your position or you set your, goalpost or whatever. His position, I think, is better. When you set your position and you're like unwilling to move on it. And if I finish this story with leftovers with a set position, I just know that in like a few years I'm gonna come back and be like, damn, I kind of fumbled the bag on that, because I wasn't, like, I'm 27. I'm not gonna have all the answers, right? And I don't want to have that. I want this to be more of like a thought experiment than me trying to force my ideas and or ideals on people through a story. So I'm giving a lot of room for like nuance in the conversation, but that still doesn't stop the fact that I feel bad about, or I feel insecure, yes, but I feel irresponsible for not making a hard point on some of these topics. Like, I can't, it's so hard because I can't say specifically what I'm feel irresponsible for not making a hard point on, but like, it's, hopefully you understand. Hopefully you understand where I'm coming from. I feel like this point in particular is like falling apart because I haven't had enough time to be introspective on it, but I also think that's important to put that out there, because I don't want to come to you guys with all of the answers for things, right? Like with my I like the process of figuring yourself out and having that out there for other people who are also figuring themselves out to look at and be like, oh, hey, I'm not alone, so the fact that this is not something that I completely have figured out, or that I'm completely settled my thoughts on, or can even talk about without a bunch of stuttering, I'm okay with that, because I think it's important to show. And like I said, with the leftovers, coming back later on, I could come back to this and be like, damn, I know how I feel about that now, and that's a fun experience for me. It's all about the journey, not so much the destination. I think so. Actually, that kind of summarizes what how I feel about leftovers in general, and that actually might be important to this point in particular, because I feel like it is about the journey and not so much the destination. And looking at Leftovers, it's a Hoenn saga, and we're getting a slice out of Hoenners, Jesus, the Hoenn region. We're getting a slice out of the Hoenn region's life for that time period, but that, like, it's not necessarily gonna end all tied up in a bow. And you know, I feel like putting a big moral, like, stamp of approval on certain things and disapproval on other things wraps it up too clean. It's kind of, actually, it's like the oh my god, it's literally, I've literally already done this already. That's crazy. For those of you who have read up to chapter 16, yes, chapter 16, this is a spoiler if you haven't, I'm sorry, but if those of you who read chapter 16, the Kiba and Kohen fight, if you've seen my author's notes, I mentioned that, like, it was originally supposed to end with both of them, like, Kiba winning and getting her point across, and, you know, Kohen just kind of being like, okay, like, I get it, I see your point, and her, like, both of them having a respect for each other through fighting, and that's how it was supposed to end. But then I had a situation with a friend, and I realized that, like, hey, it's not always that cut and dry. So the fight, if you the fight ends with, like, no resolution. And it's like, there's certain things that have been resolved, certain, you know, like, certain things that have been resolved. I don't want to spoil anything, but that's coming up, I mean, because obviously we know that Asadi and Kohen had that talk at the end, but it's not like no one has been proven right, no one has been, you know, proven wrong, even. It's just a situation, and I'm more interested in just observing the situation as is and seeing, like, where all the sides fall. And that, I think, started forming in the whole Kohen and Kiba fight situation, because that really changed a lot of how I was working on their characters and the trajectory that they go down. So yeah, I think I've said what I need to say about this point. I'm losing wind. It's like 10:54 right now, and I haven't eaten breakfast yet. So I turn into a shrub when I haven't eaten by 11. So I will go ahead and end this here. I'm actually surprised that the episode went on for as long as it did. It's 42 minutes, which is a nice solid period of time for a Leftovers Log episode. So which is, I'm surprised that, because I didn't think I was gonna talk so much about these 4 points, but here we are. So yeah, thank you guys for watching. I hope this wasn't too rambly, and I hope you were able to, I don't know, find some stuff that you related to. Also, please put in the comments if you have, like, your own insecurities, well, not if, any of the insecurities that you have that you want to share, because we all have them. Put those in the comments, and, like, yeah, let's like, talk about stuff, I don't know. Or just use this as a dumping ground. Use the comment section as a dumping ground for, you know, things that maybe you're trying to get off your chest and stuff. Similar to this video, just in general. So yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and go, and thank you for watching. Pakara, signing out.